Welcome to Rev Up Your Business with Hilda Gann. We are now in season 5, and we've changed the name and the focus of the podcast. Rev Up Your Business is the podcast for small to medium-sized business owners, entrepreneurs, and HR professionals. Each week, we share tips, strategies, and trends on how you can build success in your business. I share my expertise as a people-centric leader in work culture and human resources. My guests share their expertise in human resources, marketing, sales, finance, IT, leadership, and the multiple facets that you need to take care of your business. If you love to learn and want to find out how you can rev up your business, join us. Welcome to another episode of Rev Up Your Business. Today, my guest is Yvonne Palomino, and we're going to dive deep into how do you detox from a bad culture. So let me tell you a little bit about Yvonne. Yvonne is a recognized expert on behavioral sciences applied to cultural change and learning. He's got over 18 years in global leadership positions in marketing and corporate strategies. As part of the leadership team in global corporations, Yvonne has led teams across all continents and delivered a track record of innovation and human development. He has launched global campaigns in corporate transformation and people's development, leading a global talent accelerator program to transform a Fortune 500 company. Yvonne is also an entrepreneur and a founder. He has worked with more than 100 corporations to build high-performing and human-centric culture at work. He writes and speaks about the future of work, human-centric work cultures, well-being at the work, and the future of learning. He is the host of his own podcast, Growth Hacking Culture, and founder of companies in EdTech and work culture transformation. I am so excited to have Yvonne join me because, like me, he has a passion for work culture, and we're going to dive in deep today on detoxing a bad work culture. Welcome, Yvonne.
Thank you, Hilda. It's lovely to be with you. I just wanted to give a little bit of context about my story.
Go ahead.
So, despite the fact that I have been already working for a couple of years in the area of work culture, prior to that, I was like kind of this geeky engineer. I got a degree in biotechnology, so you can imagine. Talking about numbers. And my first work, in fact, was crunching numbers. Like any good engineer, I went into the area of crunching numbers, doing corporate strategy, as you mentioned. And the passion for people, the understanding of work culture came along the way when I did my first big fail. Hilda, imagine that I was around like 5 years in my corporate life, and I had the responsibility to help an organization to do a transformation. And basically, it was a transformation driven by technology. And suddenly, when you have this responsibility and you don't understand so well the impact of people when you want to change an organization, then you do a lot of mistakes. And I can tell you, my first job in corporate strategy doing transformation was a big fail because I didn't understand how much the human has an impact into a transformation in an organization. And from there, maybe there was a little bit of this passion that came up to get a little bit of understanding of human psychology especially when there is a big changes in organizations. That's how I started.
Thank you for sharing that, because I think people think it's automatic. I'm gifted or I'm not. My brother went to university for med school. They had one course in behavior, like human behavior. And do you know what they did? The whole bunch of them said, you either got it or you don't got it. Why do we need to take a course in human behavior? What is one course going to do to us as doctors? They revolted. They all got passed. And I yelled at him. I was in nursing at the time. I said, what do you mean? Because nursing cares about people. I said, what do you mean? This is the one course that's going to make you a little bit more, understanding. And they said, no, none of us wanted to do it. So the power of numbers, but it irked me so much. And I love how you talk about your engineering roots. I spent 17 years of my career working with my husband in engineering. I get, engineers. I worked with them. We had a great relationship. And I encourage them to think about the people side of it. We were in transportation, and civil engineering, which is part of transportation, is part of civil engineering, is the human side, the most human side of engineering. So I appreciate your candor. I appreciate that you shared that. I really understood from lessons learned the impact of that. Because oftentimes people are hired and promoted because, number one, you got the project management skills, and number two, you got the technical skills. And those people skills will come like they did for my brother's graduating class. So thank you for sharing that. And then that's led you to where you are today.
So I liked the word that you used, talking about people that are gifted about it. And I have the impression that I wasn't gifted. Like any typical engineer, I had my challenges to be empathetic with people. I had my challenges to communicate. I had a lot of social anxiety, Hilda. You cannot believe how stuck up I was back in the days of university. And it is because of these challenges that I think that I took it as something that I had to overcome in my life to get better at that. Because I understood that it's not because I couldn't demonstrate that I care about people that I wasn't good at that. I had to work on that.
Yeah.
So the area I mentioned to you, this moment of my life when I was confronted, I was a little bit more younger and innocent back in my my early days of my corporate life, and I understood that there was, without the understanding of human psychology, you cannot, in fact, overcome all this resistance to change. And change goes both ways. In fact, it is something that you want to achieve, and a state that you want to reach. But change is also the difficulty that organizations have to move from the past. It's a resistance that pulls you down. And that drives you a little bit towards the core of our topic. It is that when you let go your culture and you let go a couple of people that are maybe high performers but have bad behaviors, it is very difficult to change that. It's not as easy as if I put new policies, people will change. No, because there is going to be this, how do we call it? These tacit rules that happens that as long as I'm performing, I will allow myself to be a little bit pushy with my people. I will allow myself to crack a little bit the jokes between the boys about girls. I can allow myself to do certain things because I got the power. And what made me get to this point today, in terms of progression or promotions, will lead me to further to go even higher. So we have already the expectations that nothing will happen as long as we perform.
I like how you put that. It's also that sense of entitlement. I got to this position, so I have, a little bit more flexibility to be who I want, to be bossy. And sometimes people think that because it's the stasis you talked about. The past showed that people were, kind of pushy or angry and upset, and they have that right to be. So that's the role model they grew up on. So that's what they emulate, and they think that's the norm, and that I'm entitled to do that. And I like how you say they think they have room to do that. So what's the flip side of that? No, we need to stop that. Like, what are you getting at there?
Listen, of course we have to stop that, but let me get little by little to that.
Sure.
This sense of entitlement is not only that for the people who are conducting the bad behaviors. This sense of entitlement makes that if there is a young person observing this behavior from their how do you call it, from people who has more power than them.
Yep.
We are going to mime these behaviors. If I'm younger and I observe that my boss is behaving in a certain, we are going to, of course, to mime it, and we are going to believe that these are the behaviors that are being rewarded. And if I mime, copy and paste, I do some mirroring of these behaviors, I will also succeed. So it is a viral effect that is produced by allowing. And the sense of allowing is, it doesn't look that strong, but it is like small people that can maintain certain behaviors and produce a certain influence the culture of an organization. And we believe that if there is results, we can let it go because this person cannot be replaced. The skills that this person has cannot be replaced. But at the same time, is producing for the long term certain an effect that can make that people will leave, that can make that people will change jobs, or that they are going to be they're going to have like this sense of presenteeism where they are not very productive because they are not living the life that they wanted.
That was a great point, Ivan, that you brought out. And I think talking about when young, and I think that was what I was alluding to earlier, when young people see a role model, they think that that's the way to be, rather than be a nice manager that inspires and motivates and leads people. They see this is acceptable. This is a good leader. And even though I don't like how I feel when you yell at me, I'm going to learn that. So it, as you say, perpetuates in a culture because it's allowed to be recognized as okay to do.
Mm. And it's embedded in our brain, Hilda. I don't know, it's like almost it's our sense of protection. We understand rules not because they are written, but because we observe the action and reaction of these rules. So we believe that we are going to survive better in an environment that is made in order to compete with each other if we follow the tacit rules more than the rules that they put on a website, in the intranet of a company with 7 values that we need to follow. No, that we are going to forget. We are going just to observe our bosses and copy and believe that this is our sense of protection.
It isn't what you put on the wall, your mission, vision, values. It's the actual behaviors day to day that make sense. And when my husband and I created our company, iTrans, we wanted to create a place where people loved what they did and loved where they worked. And so we knew the textbooks, we went for our degrees, and we knew about, oh yeah, you got to put that mission, vision, and values. And it always stayed up on the walls. In corporate, they stayed up on the walls, but we didn't want that. We wanted to have it living, breathing. And we called people on it. We said, this is our values: insight, integrity, and innovation. You need to live this. We need to work together as a team. So our actions and our behaviors were integrated into our mission, vision, and values that sat on the wall. So I get, I love what you're doing, and I want you to continue sharing. We were fortunate because we created from scratch. We didn't come into a company and there were already 100 people and it was a bad culture that we had to fix. So people can say, hey, sure, Hilda, that's easy. You created this thing from scratch, so you got to form it. Well, it wasn't easy in that if everybody didn't behave well the way we wanted, it would have just perpetuated. So I love the fact that you're going to talk today about detoxifying a bad culture. You're talking about the ingrained actions that happen on a day-to-day basis.
You said it. It cannot be something that you put in a website or in a wall. You need to be able to transform like this sense of purpose. We are not talking anymore about mission, vision, because it looks a little bit like kind of toxic, like because it's going to talk about being number one in the market and all that stuff. But we are human beings. We don't follow something for profit. We follow things that have meaning for us, and that means that is something that is providing for positive impact to our society, to our communities. So the sense of purpose is important, especially when you are creating from scratch, as you did, your own company.
Yeah.
But this has to be followed by certain number of values, the how we are going to be doing things, and it has to be followed by behaviors, actions. And very often in good, sizable organizations, they forget this part where to go from values to the behaviors, how you are going to demonstrate, because it's easy to say our job in XYZ company on Fortune 500 is about working with collaboration. But the meaning of collaboration for a human being who is working in accounting, for a human being working in sales, will be completely different.
Yeah.
It needs to be relatable. It needs to be converted about how can I be me doing invoices every single day, collaborate with the rest of the organization? How can I have this co-ownership of the things that are happening in my organization? And if we don't do this tightening this relevancy with the individual, it doesn't work. So what you as a company, as I love your example because it's from the scratch. You started with a purpose and you decided not to write a paper about what it means, but to act upon it.
Yeah.
And every single action was observed and mined. And every people could then take an interpretation about what does it mean for me.
Yes. And that's the key. You know, many companies know what they need to do strategically, but it's taking that strategy and putting it into action so that it's integrated into the organization. And that's the key to success. And I think when we talk about diversity and equity right now, so many larger companies have created the plan and the strategy, but they haven't brought it into the integration. I call it the action stage. And in my term, it's inclusivity. And my Rev Up concept, when you adopt the Rev Up principles, you actually bring a collaboration to the organization, a sense of inclusivity. And that's what you and I are talking about, is not having these words, but to take those words and bring them into action. And it sounds like that's one of the keys to detoxifying a bad behavior, helping people to bring it into an action stage.
One thing is that I found that very often. I mean, there is no scientific proof to that, is that organizations behave very similarly to individuals. So the psychology of an organization will be very close to the psychology of an individual. That means that it is very difficult for people to change. It's also very difficult to change for an organization. If we don't have like pleasure that is on the moment, we are not going to think about it. Organizations sometimes delay the fact of implementing actions that are very human-centric driven or work on the culture because they don't see the benefit right there. It doesn't transform within 1 month to say we got $800,000 of savings. So because it's something that needs a little bit more of time in order to be reflected. And that's why they don't think about it. But what is clear is that there are numbers. And despite that, there are numbers that prove that there is a correlation, like between a positive work culture and the results, the performance of an organization. Like, for instance, let's talk about McKinsey made a study. They said, for instance, if an organization has a positive work culture, then they have 3.5 times more likely to have above average financial performance. Numbers. Another number, 4.5 times more likely to have above average customer satisfaction. Customer satisfaction equal to more money. 6.3 times more likely to have above average employee productivity. So these are clear numbers, but our brain functions but we are not going to have them like tomorrow. We are fighting for the survival of this company, but we want results like in the next month. And that's why it's always these efforts that could be done in terms of developing a positive work culture are always delayed. And also the efforts to get rid of the people who are making a bad culture are always delayed. It's always when there is like, we have a little bit of financial pressure. Okay, now let's get rid of the people who were just messing around in the company and polluting the culture of the company. But why do you have to wait? Because in the meanwhile, these people have influenced in a negative manner a big bunch of the organization. And a lot of young people have observed their behaviors and thought that that's the way to make it.
Yeah, there's that ripple effect, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So what are some tips that you would share with my viewers and listeners on steps that they can do to detoxify that bad culture? You mentioned getting rid of the people, but what 3 would you say are the ones? Or more.
Yeah, what more? I I don't know. Listen, it can change in order to detoxify a bad culture. Cannot happen if it is does not start from the CEO. The CEO has to make the big statement of what he cannot tolerate in terms of the how. That's number one, the big statement. So that means just the open communication that's about saying this is what it should be, and there is no other way in terms of how you need to behave with each other. Secondly, if your performance management system is not aligned, it does not do anything. If it is just about results and it's not about how and what are the behaviors that are being rewarded, if you don't reward the good behaviors, nothing will happen, right? It's like I'm thinking back to the times where I was in my corporate life. I mentioned to you, I had this innate, maybe, interest into empathizing with people. I had it in the back of my mind, but the stress and the fact that I was judged specifically about outcomes that are business outcomes, that made me put just until the later stage any informal way of bonding with my team. I was delaying it because I was not rewarded on that. And sometimes I had the comments even, I'm spending too much time with that type of things. And because the company wouldn't recognize it. So as if you don't put in place a way of judging the people, assessing performance of people that includes these behaviors that you want to reward, nothing basically will happen. And the third, in fact, becomes like, yes, the impact of a negative person in a room. Let's say that we are 7 people in a room and then there is a negative person, is, according to psychology, it lasts longer. It will have an influence in the overall performance of the interactions, of the dynamics of a team, even in a discussion. It will last longer. So it's very difficult to get rid of the impact of, even if you kick a person out, the behavior stays around for longer time than if you had a person who was super positive. The influence will be, it will take less time. So you need to solve the problem at the origin and get rid as soon as possible of people who don't have the right behaviors.
I remember a time when I had to present, at a board meeting, and how the first person reacts affects the whole tone of the group. So all you need is that negative person to say, that's a dumb idea. Nobody's going to come up and say, hey, but I think it's a great idea. So do I. All those other people who would have voted for, it being a great idea, squelch, because nobody wants to stick their neck out now when somebody has said negative. We are more negative prone people than we are positive. So I get that. And I loved your advice. It's got to come from the top. That CEO has to make the statement this is the culture we want to create. And I want each one of us to play an ownership role in that. as a manager, as an employee, a technical admin staff, all of us need to perpetuate this, whatever the big statement is. The second thing you said was, the third thing you said was get rid of those people that are the negative work cultures, forces that get rid of the people who create a negative work culture, but that thing will linger. Although whenever we've terminated somebody who has been, negative, the relief on people's faces, on the environment, is like, why didn't it happen sooner? And I hear that from all levels, from the person who is the founder, who didn't want to get rid of that person because they brought in the money, right? Why are you cutting off your arm? But in the end, it is better. And the second point, I forgot what that was again. The second point.
So we said the CEO has to do the big communication, the big
Right.
statement and the performance. You need to be able to include it in the performance assessment. Otherwise, nothing will happen.
Right. I mean, and that's such a critical part of the business organization. These are processes. But if you don't state, these are the things we hold you accountable to, and every year you annually are ranked for them, and your evaluation, your compensation is reflected in that. I'll share a quick anecdote. It isn't about positivism, but it is about behavior. In our performance evaluation, we clearly said that they will submit their timesheets on time, right? That it was under corporate responsibilities, and in their parameters, one of them was submits their biweekly timesheets on time. And I thought, how do I change this behavior? So I had my accounting person keep track of 8 pay periods, or maybe a little bit longer. And then I called in people who were less than 50% or less. And they're engineers, right? So you think like an engineer. And I said, I've been tracking the submissions, and you are tracking at 33% on time. What if you went to your client and said, here's the best we could do. 33% of the information here is accurate. And you could see that they were bowed down like this and going. And I said, I'll track this from time to time, and I really don't expect to see you back in my office. So the anecdote is, you need to look at performance. You need to look at performance, and you need to talk to people about it. Not in a negative way. It was a light banter, but they got the point, and I reached them because they're engineers, they're data-driven people. And I said, how do I reach this so it's not me yelling or complaining? And that was my secret sauce for that example.
Hilda, in fact, most of organizations do not realize that if you want to change culture, it's not about training people. In fact, I will tell you a little bit more about it. It's not about training people. It's about allowing that they have the processes and the systems in place in order to enable these behaviors, the new behaviors that we want. Now, let me get back to the big elephant in the room, which is about training people. You don't train people to have good behaviors. That's stupid. Sorry to say that. This is not how we learn. Because let's look at a little bit some examples. Like, I've been thinking about it because I'm part of a minority. I grew up in Europe, in a very white community. For instance, the understanding of biases. We all have biases because in human psychology is the way of protecting ourselves to something that we are not familiar with. So that's why we will have preferences to go with some brownies, or certain people who have similar values, or and so on, in order to feel protected in the environment. So you don't go and teach people how to become a little bit more awareness about inclusion or diversity. You have to make them practice. You have to make them understand that, to make them aware that we all have them, and you cannot get rid of it. But you have to be mindful. So what you have to teach them is how to be mindful rather than a set of rules or principles that are memorized like it was, I don't know, the 10 Commandments. And even though the 10 Commandments are super clear, there is still a good portion of the population who doesn't follow them, right? So the way we train people in for change is more related to train them how to show them or help them to have the mental process to develop meta skills, how to be more self-aware, how to be more resilient. But you don't teach resilience like you teach biotechnology in a university. It's not a set of principles.
It's
It
an
is
art versus a science.
exactly. It is. It has to be based on experience, into training, into feedback, so that people really build something that where they can take on their own certain decisions and they learn how to fish instead of being fed with bunch of principles.
I'm interested in your perspective on COVID and how COVID may have helped us become more resilient.
I have the impression that before COVID, we didn't know how resilient we could be. And the thing is that a lot of organizations that were very traditional on the way of doing business, and I've been dealing with a lot with companies that were in the retail environment, and I could easily, I believed at the beginning of COVID that they were going to disappear, but how suddenly they could mobilize their organization in order to adapt to e-commerce, for instance, when they were fully retail, like the formal, traditional, uh, uh, physical retail, that they could mobilize resources because of the survival mode, and that people were able to follow that because they knew that it was without the survival of the company, there wasn't going to be any jobs.
Yeah.
And finally, there was a stress test of how well people understands that in the right moments we can mobilize and do things that we didn't believe that we were capable. If they had done it without COVID, they wouldn't have succeeded, maybe, because there was this big drive that it is.
Yeah.
It is about survival today, and the COVID has brought this stress test of resilience, but COVID has also shown, demonstrated how much our leadership was not ready, because suddenly they had a lot of stress and they didn't know how to support their teams in order to work in a different ways back from home, in order to support them empathetically, connect with them remotely. So it also opened a kind of worms to see that they suck. Leaders were not ready for this change.
Yes, yes, yeah. No, COVID taught us a lot of things. And I still remember pre-COVID, I'm pretty sure it was Google that said, we have reviewed this idea of remote work and this will not work. And they blanketly made the statement, they put it out in the media. And then of course COVID came, and months later everybody was working remotely, and it's like, so much for your research, so much for your confirmation. But thank goodness that people were resilient, companies were resilient because they had to, and people learned how to be resilient because they also had to. And I think I wanted to hear your version of it, and I feel totally the same way, is that people are leaving now because they've learned that they can survive. They've had the litmus test taken during COVID, and they know that they've even found their own passions. And so they may continue then to be a little bit more flexible, to learn to be more change, taking us back to that detoxify. Do you feel people are less resistant to change now than they were pre-COVID?
I think that they are more resistant to change, but they are not following what they are being told. So it is the moment, and you kind of hinted it, the fact that people have been leaving during the COVID time because they found them that they had the time also to reflect about my sense of purpose. Does it match what I'm having? Maybe I realized today that I don't need this money in order that what I need is to follow a passion, that it doesn't deserve this level of stress, of pressure that I have day to day, when I have discovered that spending 30 to 1 hour with my kids doing homework gives me much more satisfaction about my life than staying until 7-8 o'clock in the with my boss at work. So it has been a moment where people have broken a little bit of the chains. This chain where you feel a slave of this salary that you believe that you really need in order to keep your family together, and sometimes we don't. Mm-hmm. Maybe this was the time where people have found out that they could do something else. You still need a job, but you could take 20%, 30% cut of your job in order to feel more fulfilled in your life.
Find something that you love to do. Like our company, love what you do, love where you work. I always said that, love what you do and love where you work. And the minute you don't, well, not the minute, but when you find that you don't, then you need to look for an opportunity, because that change may be the change that gives you that better balance, that happiness and joy, both in your personal and your professional life. We've had some great conversations both off camera before and today. Is there anything else, Yvonne, that you want to share with my listener viewers before I thank you for your time?
Okay, I'm going to let them see a little bit of my extreme side. So when you were talking about find what you love, I was thinking about this American writer, Charles Bukowski. I don't know if you're familiar with Charles Bukowski. Okay, he's a guy from the 70s or whatsoever. He wrote, find what you love and let it kill you. Okay, that was extreme. You made me think about something completely extreme, but my mind works like this, goes from one extreme to the other. Anyways, Hilda, listen, for me, the key message about this development or this realization that today there is toxic cultures that are still there. COVID has helped to certain organizations to do better a certain number of things, to be more caring about employees, to be more human-centric, but by far, we are not there. Still, I believe that we don't have to be in the case of Uber, where there is sexual harassment, where there is people behaving like idiots. No. Sometimes toxic environment is a place where we cannot speak up, where we feel timid, that we are going to be judged if we say something because we are not following the regular trends of whatever our boss said. So it's kind of passive-aggressive environment where the hostility is, you don't feel it. It's not really hostile, but every day you feel like shit of going to work, because you know that you are not saying what you have in your heart, and that's also a type of toxic environment. So organization needs to change, because Gen Zs don't take that easily the bullshit about having the dream of having a good salary, going for the status. They care more about a balanced environment where their opinions are represented. So they might say no to you because you have a bad toxic environment. So you either change it. And for people who feels that are living in an environment that they don't want, they have this cognitive dissonance, that the dream that I had in my life is not matching the environment that I'm working in, speak up. And if nothing changes, leave.
Yes. And I totally agree with you that this younger generation that's in the workforce now really have passionate views about work-life balance, as well as views of society and the sustainability of the environment. And if your values don't align with my values, I'm not going to stay. You know, they know what they want more than other generations who were, yes, you know, I need the security, I need the job, and the job is there for 8 hours, but my life post job is more important. No, they want to make sure it's more seamless, more integrated, and kudos to them. So those companies who are feeling they have a toxic work culture, don't know how to get out of it, you got to listen to, hopefully you've learned from listening to what Yvonne and I have shared. And he is a wealth of knowledge. He's got his biotech engineering degree, but he's also got his passion for people and how to combine that engineering mentality of solving problems and his desire to help people, because he learned it from his first job. So I appreciate that you did have that learning experience, and that we as a society are better for your knowledge and experience. How do people get a hold of you, Yvonne?
Hilda, the easiest way, in fact, is through LinkedIn. So you just type Ivan Palomino. Palomino it looks like an Italian name, but it's not. It's a Spanish name, by the way. A lot of people say Palomino looks Italian. That's one way. The other way, of course, is to go to the website of my company, KULT.com, to find that we have a form. And by the way, I think that we even have the possibility to reach me out directly from the website, peoplecall.com. So that's the two ways to do it.
Well, you are a wealth of knowledge, particularly when it comes to really making changes in work cultures. And so I appreciate your time today. Thank you for coming, Yvonne.
Thank you, Hilda. It was lovely to spend time with you.
And I enjoyed our conversation today, and future conversations that I know that we will continue to have together. For those of you who are listening and viewing, give it a thumbs up. This was an amazing conversation, and I encourage you to listen to it again if you caught a few tips and think, what did they say again? Because everything that Yvonne has shared really will make you think about, how do you create a healthier work culture? Thank you, everybody. Have a great day and rev up your business. Thank you for tuning in to Rev Up Your Business with Hilda Gann. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe to our podcast on YouTube and Spotify to stay up to date with all of our latest episodes. For more HR tips, strategies, and to learn how you can create a people-centric workplace, visit our website at peoplebrightconsulting.com.